This is a discussion about C.S. Lewis's four different loves. And we will talk about each love and present evidence, discuss about it, and then move on to a different love, starting with Storge. And my example for Storge is when you have siblings, you often fight with them. For example, I have one older sibling who's an older sister to me, and we often fight a lot because we don't disagree on many things. However, since she's been in my life since I was born, because she's older than me, she's been a constant familiar thing. And that doesn't change. And so whenever we have a fight, we always go back to being the same old sibling bond right after. Because as Story Love states, we love what is familiar to us. And so having a sister is something I am familiar with. So losing her after an argument is just something that's implausible for me to think about.
Okay. So I will also present evidence as my older sibling. I have an older sibling guy who's in college, and I like what I like what Vari talked about, where she said that Storge is based off familiarity, which is true because well, I know that because I see him every single day, well before he went to college. And I think another point that Lewis writes is that familiarity can also be an excuse for cruelty. So uh my brother and I see each other every day, and I guess we've gotten so used to each other that he can not abuse me, but he can throw me around, he can insult me, this and that, and he can do that because he knows at the end of the day we are still brothers, we will still be with each other, and we have this familiar bond. And I guess when he moved to college, that familiarity was kind of gone, and it kind of was a it was different. It was very different, and it did not feel normal because that sense of Storge love wasn't there anymore because what was so familiar to me was just not with me anymore after he went to college.
I
I
feel
don't know. I
like
feel
for
like
me,
the
it's
interesting
not
thing
like,
is,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I feel like for me, it's like an opposite because I'm the older sibling and the unfamiliar thing like happened, just entered my life. So it's like the vice versa of like, yeah. So it took a while. I feel like it took a while for me to get used to like or being familiar with having a little sister.
I feel like familiar, yeah, it does take some getting used to, but once you are familiar with somebody, you can be mean to them and they're always going to be there. So like part of that is good and part of that's bad. Um, but also like it's like nice having that sense of security that like you're familiar, but also like that can be hard when that familiarity is broken.
I get what both like you, Rosemary, and Kylie are both saying because I'm a middle child, right? So I both have a younger and older brother. And I like my younger brother's like 8 years younger than me. So like I was pretty grown up before he was born. And so of course it was very unfamiliar at first, but now that it's familiar, I feel like I have the rights to boss him around as an older sibling. And he just like he says he hates me, but at the end of the day, he still loves me. So like I guess it's a story love, familiar love.
Are you sure he loves you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
He
story.
loves Val more. He loves Val more, but he loves
All
We
right,
don't know.
moving on to Ophelia.
Moving on.
Continue.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start. So philia is a friendship love or brotherly love, and C.S. Lewis describes it as the least natural of the loves because it's not based on any sexual or physical attraction, nor is it like storge, where the mother has this like instinctual affection for her child or her children. And according to drgeorgej.com, it's like also reciprocal love because it's based on mutual benefit. And yeah, and it's the friendship is built on a common interest. And like I think the bond you create between your friends could also be a selfless love like agape, because while you are there for the mutual benefits, there are times when you will do selfless things for your friends. And one like example would be kind of like personal of how I make friendships. The friendships I made are just built on common interests. Say, I don't know, the favorite K dramas I like to watch are like K-pop or manhwas or mangas. And that's how I make connections with friends, and I strengthen friendships with them.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Rosemary just said, and I want to draw some main points from Lewis's passage, mainly that not everyone will experience friendship. When true friends are separated, there is no need to reminisce on past times to catch up. True friends initially share an activity and then start having a liking for each other, which then breeds friendship and not the other way around, and that friendship is mostly unexpressed. And I want to draw some comparisons between those main points and a TV show that I really love, which is Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where Jake Peralta and Charles Boyle are the best of friends, apparently. But if I were to use Lewis's main points, there's when true friends are separated, there is no need to reminisce on past times or try to catch up. That one is somewhat met because we see examples in the show where Jake and Charles are separated, like when Jake went undercover or when Jake had to go into witness protection, that they do get separated and they do come back together as friends, but they don't seem like they seem like they really want to catch up on times and like the things that they were separated from. But as Lewis puts it, everything will be taken up as if we've been parted only for a few hours, which isn't really the case in Jake and Charles's example. And another part that kind of is iffy with the two's friendship is that where it says friendship is mostly unexpressed. I think if anyone watches Brooklyn Nine-Nine, they will see that Charles Boyle really loves Jake Peralta and will never stop at any length to show that he really is Jake Peralta's friend. And he gets really jealous when other people try to be his friend and not Charles, which kind of goes against Lewis's analysis on philia or friendship love, where it is unexpressed and it doesn't get jealous. In fact, it sometimes, as Lewis puts it, it might even invite a third. So Jake and Charles's friendship, although it might seem really, really nice or really funny on a TV show, I think if Lewis were to look at this friendship, I don't know if he would actually call it philia or actual friendship love. Yeah.
I feel like there are like,
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there are different types of philia. I'm not sure, but I feel like philia is just like such a broad concept, and it can be specified. So maybe it's just a different philia from what C.S. Lewis described as. And like, I feel like for catching up and then meeting up again, I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to depend on how deep your friendship was, but then also when you made that friendship, I feel like it's easier for you to reconnect with people that you met earlier in your life than people you met, say, in your like college life or adult life.
I was just gonna say, if we kind of go down that train of thought, then technically classifying different loves, his four loves, like how Lewis classifies there's only four loves, shouldn't necessarily be true then. And
yeah, that's true.
I guess
the other thing is that could fall under that could fall under like storky love, or like maybe Lewis's point is that like there's philia as a broad term that can be applied to so many different things, that like I mean like so many different like friendships, like I don't know, like I guess like the way you experience it with different people might be slightly different.
I'd like to support your theory, except after reading his passages, I really don't know what he wants from us, so I can't tell you.
That is true.
I think it is interesting though that like some of them, like he kind of says that like not everybody experiences true friendship, and so I think like what we say are our friends aren't necessarily philia love. Like there's some people who you like really love and who you're not jealous of, like in Gusty's example, but like you're still like you're not jealous of them if they make other friends because you love them and you know that that's like you care about them, you know. Eros is like the idea of passion and that romantic love. So kind of something that Lewis says is that Eros is the dive into the pool. So it's that like plunge that gets you in. But Eros promises permanence, but isn't permanent itself. So Eros is more of the passion side of that love. And it promises permanence because that can turn into something like marriage, but that passion doesn't last forever. Sometimes it comes and goes, but it's not going to always be there. And so that's why I think a lot of the world struggles with Eros, because they feel like when they start to lose that passion, then they think, oh, we must not love each other anymore. When really, like, marriage or like long-term relationships are so much more than just the passion of Eros. And Lewis kind of compares it to a garden at the end of the reading, whereas like Eros is like a garden. It can be beautiful, but it can't like weed itself. You have to cultivate it. You have to take care of it, because like love, Eros happens to you, but like in order to maintain that love, you have to make the choice to maintain that. So kind of my example was I was gonna like do some sort of movie, but every movie I could think of only shows that passion side of Eros. So like every Disney movie is always like Beauty and the Beast got married and lived happily ever after, but it doesn't tell us like anything after they get married or like what that happily ever after meant. So then I looked up the world's longest married couple, and they've been married for 86 years. And it's kind of interesting because, yeah, basically that passion doesn't last forever, but they still loved each other. And they said that divorce was never an option for them. And there wasn't any secret to their marriage. They just like simply loved each other and they cared for each other. They respected each other and they supported each other and they communicated with each other and trusted each other. So it kind of shows that there's so much more to like maintaining that relationship of Eros than just feeling the love.
Right. To continue off of what Kiley has said, her bringing it back to the fact where Lewis compared Eros to a garden that needs to be taken care of. I think one of the more recent popular evidence pieces would probably be Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello's breakup, because Shawn was like chasing after her for like a long time. He wrote that song "Treat You Better" when she was with another guy to dedicate to her, and eventually they did get together. Right? They got together. They had their happy ending, their passionate time, and then COVID hits. Boom. And in an interview, and this is in like an Elle article written by, I don't know their name, but it states that Shawn says, and I quote, "The relationship was getting stale and complacent, and they decided they are better off being friends." And I guess it just shows the fact that like Eros is this passion thing that promises forever. However, after the dive in, if you don't know how to swim, you're gonna drown, obviously, or jump back out. So like, okay, that was kind of morbid, but yeah. And when you mentioned Kiley the movie thing where you couldn't find a movie, I feel like a great example from not film, but Phantom of the Opera. There's a part 2 to it, a part 2 where Christine gets married to that guy who was chasing after her from the start, and they have a kid together, but he becomes like a gambling drunk and in debt, and so like their happy marriage kind of isn't so happy. Yeah, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think Eros can be beautiful, like that couple that married for 86 years. But also, like, if you're not doing anything about it, then it will just kind of go away.
Yeah, I think Eros can also drive some people to insanity, like Romeo and Juliet, which is an extreme example where both of them kill themselves, but also shows how Eros can make people do some pretty dumb things, or at least if it's not Eros, then the illusion of Eros can make people do some very dumb things. So yeah, and I agree with what you guys were both saying. Rosemary, do you have anything to say about love? What is it called?
I mean,
Love?
Eros.
Yeah.
No, cafe.
You guys pretty much said it already. Like you can't have Eros without doing something that benefits your partner as well. Like doing something for your partner, not just yourself. And like only desiring your partner. So yeah.
After that discussion, we need
now we can move on. Speaking about
Unconditional
different
love.
loves apart from Eros.
Conditional love.
we need
Yes.
Jesus in our conversation now.
Okay, moving on to unconditional love. So agape, according to Britannica, is the highest form of love. It's said to be God's love for humans, and then it's also a selfless love in contrast to other three loves. And then yes, it's unconditional and can't be earned or merited. It's like a sacrificial, self-sacrifice love, and that they don't require anything in return. And then it's also like a very not unnatural love for humans because we don't really desire it. We talked about this in class. We don't really desire it, but it's like a love that we need. And yeah, an obvious example of agape would be Jesus dying on the cross because he died for our sins when he probably knew that like a lot of people would still turn away against him. Yeah, turn away from him. Another historical figure I thought about was Mother Teresa because she did a lot of charity work, right? She founded the Missionaries of Charities dedicated to helping the poor, the disabled, and her goal was to help quote the unwanted, the unloved, and the uncared for. She even established a special home for people with HIV or AIDS without really wanting anything in return. So yeah, I think that was just her pure desire to help people. That's like how she demonstrated agape.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Another example that I thought of for agape was this book that I had read last year. It's actually based off of like the book in the Bible, Hosea, I think. But it's about this guy who marries a prostitute because he wants to show her like how like basically show her real love. And so he's very like kind and gentle, and he like helps her out of like her situation. But she really like refuses it, and she doesn't want it. And she even runs away a couple times, not because he was mean to her, but because he loved her too much. She was like afraid of this love that he was showing her. And she felt like she would rather like live in the hateful world that she had grown up in than like experience this crazy love. And that kind of connects to agape because agape is this unconditional love. This man kept on loving her even after, like, even with every time that she like ran away from him or was afraid of him, and anytime that she like broke his trust, he still loved her. And then also, like Rosemary said, like, that
Sorry,
oftentimes we need agape. It's so uncomfortable and it's so natural to be loved. Yeah. So basically kind of the idea of like unconditional love and how she didn't want it, but actually like, spoiler, in the end, she really needed it. And it ends up like bringing her life instead of hopelessness.
This was our discussion of the four loves: agape, philia, storge, eros. Thank you for listening.
I